I want to tell you about how we think about investing. Nobody can provide a rule that will work all the time. The best we can do is to supply a way of thinking that works most of the time. Our job as investors is to do a superior job. If we do an average job, we don't add any value. Our superiority comes from having a good return earned with the risks under control. Superior investing, that's what it's all about. Everything that an investor does falls under one of two headings. Not everybody has organized the process this way. This is how I think of it. Number one, asset selection, owning more of the things that do well and less of the things that do poorly. Number two, cyclical positioning, having more invested more aggressively when the times are right and less invested more defensively when the times are wrong. In other words, fluctuating between offense and defense. The choice at any given time between offense and defense is the most important choice that an investor makes. The question is not U.S. versus foreign, stocks versus bonds, small cap versus large, value versus growth. The most important thing is whether to be aggressive or defensive at a point in time. If you can get that right, all the other things fall in line. And if you get that wrong, the rest won't help. Offense versus defense. In looking at bull markets, and I've been involved in 6, 7, 8 major bull markets in my 50 years in this business, the things that recur, in my opinion, are a high level of optimism, a low level of risk aversion, and an excess of capital available for investment. These three things, if you think about it, constitute a pretty good recipe for a bull market. And in their absence, it's hard to imagine how we would have a bull market. So optimism, risk aversion, and capital availability. Asset prices are a function of two things: the fundamentals, the reality of the company, the property, the stock, whatever it might be, and then how those fundamentals are perceived through the filter of emotion or psychology. What is it that causes price to fluctuate on the upside? What is it that causes asset prices to overstate their fundamentals and become precarious? And the answer is optimism. I sum it up as optimism. There are many factors, but clearly when people are feeling good about the future, when they are believing favorable stories, when they are expecting more and more from companies, these are the times when asset prices go high relative to intrinsic value, producing appreciation for the people who own the asset, but making the price precarious. In heated times, when the bidding is spirited, sometimes the price goes too high, and the winner of that auction is actually a loser because he or she paid too much and signed on for too much risk at the reward of too little return. We have to know when that's the case. I write often about what I call the 7 worst words in the world. Too much money chasing too few deals. In other words, excessive capital availability. And when there's too much money in a market and people are too eager to put it to work, the bidding goes too high. And the returns deteriorate, the risk rises, and the structures of the thing that's up for sale weakens. So let's talk about how these things interact together and what a typical cycle looks like. So let's say we're at a low. Maybe we've just come through a crash or a crisis or a correction, and asset prices are low. The economy has been performing poorly. Most people are smarting from their previous losses. What happens? Eventually, yes. Eventually, there is improvement. The economy starts to strengthen. Companies start to report better earnings. And once the trend gets rolling enough, the media turn to mentioning primarily favorable developments. If this goes on long enough, eventually investor expectations strengthen, optimism rises, asset prices rise, This causes people who have been holding assets to celebrate and buy more. Eventually, people who haven't been holding assets capitulate and finally give up and buy themselves. Everybody's a buyer. Not too many people are sellers because everybody feels favorably. That means asset prices strengthen even more, bringing more confidence into the markets and causing risk aversion to evaporate. At this stage in the market, usually what people say is, I love risk bearing. Risk is my friend. The more risk you take, the more money you make. Bring it on. Eventually, the economy starts to perform less well. Company earnings don't surprise, they disappoint. Eventually, the media catch on, and now they start talking about negative developments, not positive ones. What happens? Investor expectations weaken. Psychology becomes more depressed. Now, prices are falling. People have losses, not gains. The people who have been holding are chastened and withdraw. Maybe they sell. The people who haven't been holding celebrate. They pat themselves on the back, but certainly they don't jump into the market. Now, risk aversion is rising, and people are saying, risk? Just another way to lose money. I'll never touch it again. And this is what happens at the bottom. The people who have not been in the market certainly jump in and buy. This is the time when the anti-cyclical, unemotional investor should turn aggressive. Not easy. Everybody is doing the opposite. Everybody's buying at the top because they feel good. Everybody's selling at the bottom because they're depressed. This is what makes tops and bottoms. Your job, to the extent you can do it, is to do the opposite. But you are subject to the same environmental influences as everybody else. How can you resist these things? Well, number one, you have to understand the role of emotion. You have to understand that fundamentals don't fluctuate that much. Emotion and psychology fluctuate much more. You have to understand the importance of being unemotional. Not easy. If you are as emotional as the typical investor, you will do the same things as the typical investor. That is to say, buy at the top, sell at the bottom, and certainly you will not outperform. You have to try to do better. How? By being unemotional, by hiring investor managers who are unemotional, by not tampering with the process. But we always did it with trepidation. We never said we're buying and we're 100% sure it's the right thing to do. We said we're buying and we think we're right. We buy some. Maybe it cheapens further. Maybe we buy more. By the way, one of the big mistakes you can make is to wait for the bottom. A lot of people say, I'm not going to buy. I'm not going to try to catch a falling knife. Rather, I'm going to wait until the dust settles and until the uncertainty is resolved. And guess what? When the uncertainty is resolved and the knife has stopped falling, the bargains are gone. You get the bargains during the decline when everybody else wants to get out and they want your help in enabling them to get out as the prices are cascading downward.
Take a look at this chart. The US money supply is growing at one of its fastest rates in the last 5 years. When liquidity increases, more capital begins searching for investment opportunities, often boosting demand for financial assets. This is exactly what legendary investor Howard Marks explained. As excess cash flows through the economy, investor optimism rises, fear gradually fades, and higher valuations become easier for the markets to accept. More money chasing assets can push stock prices higher, even before fundamentals catch them up. Understanding this relationship between liquidity, investor psychology, and valuations can help you make better investment decisions throughout every market cycle.